Hey Joe, how are you doing?
Doing great today. How you doing today, Mark?
I'm still under the weather.
I had somebody tell me at the Prosper Show recently that they enjoyed the podcast. They came out, paid us a compliment, but that he could tell we were in different parts of the country. I'm not sure how. I said, "Did you watch?" He said, "No, I listened," and he knows that we're in different parts of the country. So where are you in the world, just so people understand?
How in the world did he know that?
I don't know. It's your funny accent, I think.
I'm up in Minnesota. So, although people think that Minnesotans have an accent, we do, but especially up north, not so much in the cities. And I'm in the Twin Cities, the St. Paul side. If anybody's ever coming through the Twin Cities, just drop me a line. Be happy to get together.
Same
And where are
here.
you?
I'm just north of Charlotte, North Carolina, up in Mooresville, North Carolina. And the more people I talk to, there's lots of sellers around here, lots of buyers around here, and I've connected with quite a few. So anybody
What?
in this area, reach out.
Well, I thought down in North Carolina, you guys are supposed to have a bit of a twang accent, aren't you?
But you know I'm not from here. Nobody's from here. Everybody moves here because they're too darn cold up north. I grew up in Maine. We fled to the south back in 2006.
Whoever that was that knew that we were in different parts of the country, I want to know how. That's pretty good.
Not only did he know that, but he came up to me to thank you and me personally for doing the podcast, number one, and doing it with Norm Farrar on SOPs, because he got to connect with Norm and it helped take his business to the next level. And he said it's made a huge difference in his business and his life.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a feel good moment at that time.
Oh, we got to be careful. Our heads are going to get really big.
I know, I know. Let's talk about somebody who doesn't have a big head, but should, because he's a really impressive guy. That's Nathan Singh. He bought a multi-million dollar SaaS site from me, and he's also been a client. We've sold his SaaS businesses before. You remember Nathan well, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Nathan is one of the nicest guys, very humble, former NASA scientist, NASA engineer, and turned entrepreneur. And we worked together first on the sale of his business last spring, and then he purchased a multi-million dollar SaaS site that we closed in the fourth quarter. And in review, we're sharing on this podcast a lot of the things that he did right to make a great impression on the buyer, to out negotiate all cash buyers, to work with the SBA lender, to literally, quote, Nathan is one of my favorite clients of all times, from the SBA lender, and the underwriter as well. He instilled confidence in everyone all along the way that made him the choice to be the buyer, that they approved him over looking at other buyers as well. And he's just done a great job getting the business sold. And then he talks a little bit about what he's done since purchasing the business, including going on a 3-week vacation within 3 weeks of buying a multi-million dollar SaaS business.
Wow, that's pretty brave. I don't think I could have done that.
He had it planned. He took it, and things went well, and they continue to go well.
Well, that's really good. So I'm excited to listen to Nathan. Nathan is genuinely one of the nicest guys I've dealt with in 10 years, and I've dealt with a lot of nice people, but he rises to the top of that list of one of the nicest guys. And I'm excited to see him in the video because I don't think I've ever met him in person, and also more importantly, listen to what he has to say.
Well, let's go to it.
All right.
Hey, Nathan, welcome to the Quiet Life Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, man. We haven't chatted for a while. I know you've been traveling, so welcome back. Listen, we talked about this briefly, but the tradition on the Quiet Life Podcast is that we don't read scripts and do flowing introductions of our guests. We'd rather hear it straight from you. So for the folks that are listening today, can you share some background on yourself as an entrepreneur and where you come from?
Yeah, sure. So before, I guess I'll start before I was even an entrepreneur. I started off doing software engineering and mostly high-level stuff like requirements and project management. Worked for the Department of Defense for a couple of years and then moved on to Boeing Space Operations doing NASA and stuff. So while I was there, I really got the bug for trying to start my own business. I didn't really have an idea what I was going to do, and I just happened to run across somebody who was selling an app and basically started this app, and it was a screenwriting program called Scripts Pro, grew that out, for a couple of years, and then it got acquired. And I was like, I want to do this again. So just rinse and repeat. After that, I had an online ordering platform called Orders In, and had the same process with that. That time I actually used a broker, and sort of grew that out to what I could do. And then we got that acquired. Of course, you were the seller for that one. And pretty much after that, me and you became very tight, and I monitored your listing specifically very closely. And then we came across the listing for Enviro Gallery, and that's kind of how that all came about.
Excellent.
Basically, that's pretty much the background. You know, I had this industry experience, and then sort of parlayed it over to this serial entrepreneur acquisition type thing for online businesses.
I think you sort of lightly touched over the fact that you were a NASA scientist. I mean, Come on, that's a glowing thing to have on your resume. Let's not make that too light. But it's an interesting transition from being, you know, a scientist working at NASA to becoming an entrepreneur. I guess once you get the bug, you get the bug and you can't stop. So that's great. So I want to talk a little bit about the process that we went through, and you in particular went through in buying Syed's business. That Syed was a guest on the podcast as well, as you know, in terms of how it worked for you and what you looked at. Can you, for the people that are out there looking at businesses and building portfolios of online businesses, can you talk a little bit about your vetting process and how you went about it? And then we'll jump into how you handled the call with Syed and the whole process right through to closing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the good thing is that I had some pretty good time between the time that I sold my last business and the time that I was looking. So I got pretty acquainted with what was in the market, multiples they were going for, and the kind of businesses that were out. So predominantly I was looking at SaaS businesses. I'd been in it before. I loved the fact that it was recurring revenue. There was no product I had to deal with. So I really zeroed in on that as my primary, but I was more or less open to great businesses that had, you know, good year-over-year return. And Syed's business sort of filled all those check marks. It had great year-over-year return. It was growing. In his case, there was kind of a lower owner involvement, which was great because that allows me to come in full-time and really, you know, push that growth. So those are some of the main key characteristics. But one of the biggest ones, and I know that you were familiar with this, because the first question I would ask you is, Joe, is this SBA-able? And I wanted to make sure that that was it, because I wanted to leverage my money as much as possible. And it may not be for everybody, but we certainly, so I've been trying to pursue SBA businesses and loans for a while for these types of businesses. And as you know, it has not been easy for the last however many years. But I would say within the last year or two, I've seen a more qualified banks and qualified SBA folks come in and be able to really take that sort of thing with e-commerce businesses and SaaS businesses, know what they're talking about, and present it to their credit department and make it happen. And that's what we saw with Steven Spears, who I know you've had as a guest as well.
That's right. Steven Spear from Bank United. For those that haven't heard the podcast, he was a guest. Very informative. As far as lenders go, I'd say Steven is top-notch, the best. And he's, you know, an entrepreneur sort of himself. Yes, he's a lender with Bank United, but he works from home often, more often than not, and lives our lifestyle, which is really, really key. And he understands e-commerce, and so do his underwriters. Really, really important. So for those not familiar with it, SBA is Small Business Administration. And if you're buying a $2 million business, for instance, you don't have to have $2 million. You can have $200,000 and really leverage your money. The note is often a 10-year note, which obviously works very, very well in terms of these online businesses. Let's jump to the first call that you had with Syed, Nathan. Can you talk about what your objective was on that first conference call with the seller?
Yeah, so, you know, the objective is pretty much similar as with most sellers. You know, you try to get a feel for the seller, and not only the business, but the seller personally, because you're going to be working pretty closely with this guy or girl. And so, you know, the main thing is I want to understand what Syed does day to day. What is his outlook for the business? You know, kind of the more the regular things that you would look for, even if you're buying a house or what it may be, and how the thing was maintained. So, with Syed, it was really, I mean, we talked about this before. He knew early on that I was a Gator, so that kind of helped me a little bit there too.
What do you mean Gator? What is that?
Florida Gator. So Florida Gator, not Florida State Seminoles, two different things.
Did you see the podcast, by the way?
I heard the podcast with Syed.
I put the hat on. I have a Gators hat. Hold on. I should wear it.
Yes.
All right. There it is right there, folks.
And it looks great.
What a fool. Sorry about that noise.
But yeah, it was really that to understand, kind of ins and outs of the businesses. As a buyer, one of the specific things you're looking for is there anything I'm missing that wasn't in the prospectus in terms of, what is the seller doing that if I remove him from this equation, will I still be able to do this? Because that's not something that you'll readily see in a prospectus or even a conversation easily. So you're kind of feeling out for that. But at the main thing, what I would advise anybody that's listening, that's looking to buy businesses, because I've been doing this for a while in terms of talking to sellers and the back and forth and even selling my own business, is that you don't want this to be a stringent interview where you're just running through all these questions. You want it to be very conversational and let it flow. And I've gotten a lot of good results by doing things that way. I think that was the main thing, is that we kept it friendly and conversational instead of, I'm trying to figure out why you're selling this because I don't trust you. It was just a totally different approach.
Well, I can tell you that with the conversation that you had with Syed, he has told me that on that call, he wasn't looking forward to it being over. He enjoyed the conversation and the things that you had in common, like the Gators, but more along the lines of taking care of the customers and taking care of your people, your staff first. And he really enjoyed it. Whereas some of the other conversations that other sellers have, they can't wait until it's over. I had that experience with one of the people that called me when I had my business for sale back in 2010. He was rude, he was abrasive, and I did all I could to stay on the line and be polite and just wanted the call to be over. And even if he'd made me a full price offer, I would have had a hard time selling him the business. So that makes a huge difference. I think, when you ended the call with Syed, his thought was, man, I really hope Nathan makes an offer because I'd love to do business with him. And the people that are using my services and products and the staff that I have in place will really enjoy working with Nathan and thrive with him as the leader of the business. Was that kind of what you were shooting for, or it's just natural that you did that?
I think it's a little bit of both. So being on the opposite side and being on Syed's end where I was selling my business, I'd come across different buyers, and you were part of these conversations where you just talked to them. You were like, this is not the right fit. Even if this guy came with a complete cash offer or whatever it could be, this may not be the right fit. And with Syed, I think, I'm kind of guessing here. And I think he was sort of looking not so much about the deal or the money, but he was looking for the right fit because he was worried about the folks that were, these are all permanent employees. There's no contractors really in this business, 5 of them. And so he really cared about them and he really cared about the customers. And so a lot of it came from me just doing things that were customer centric. I've always run companies like that. I've run teams that way. And I just sort of mentioned that. I was like, I don't know who else your other buyers are, but this is the way I do things. So I don't know if that fits with your values. And it just happened to be that way. I heard about it later on that these were his core values. And those are my core values. And we just sort of meshed over that.
Yeah, it was a deciding factor in choosing you over I think we had 2 other buyers. Let's talk about, jump forward to your due diligence process. What was your goal in due diligence? How did you approach it? And how long did it take?
It's funny. I've done more due diligence in past businesses that were much smaller. And I'll sort of elaborate on why. So the initial due diligence, I of course did, returns on profit and loss versus statements and all that good stuff, which you're supposed to do anyways. I did not do as deep of a due diligence solely because of the talks that me and Syed had and just the reputation that Syed had. So he's an influence in the WordPress community. He's got a lot on the line. So I don't really have to worry about him ripping me off and stuff like that. He was really worried about it going to the right buyer versus me worrying if I've got the wrong seller and the wrong product or whatever.
But you still verified the financials, I would assume, to make sure they were right.
Right. The basic stuff was all done, but I didn't lose any sleep worrying if something was going to happen, because again, this goes back, and I know you've harped over this. When you see that the tax returns are completely reflective of the P&L that he submitted in the prospectus, that right there gives me the warm fuzzy I need as I go forward. I don't have to pick and prod as much, trying to figure out where am I getting ripped off at. You go in more in the with the mindset of, okay, the basis is there and everything else should just sort of flow, and it did. But that was the main stuff, is just making sure that everything lined up with the way he said it was.
Yeah, let me note on the tax returns for those buyers and sellers listening. Syed had a business partner. So oftentimes with partners, the tax returns and the P&Ls are very, very clean. When you are a solo entrepreneur, you're running more things, personal things through the business. It can get a little bit messier. The SBA looks at the tax returns first and foremost. They'll use the P&Ls if it's halfway through the year, 3/4 of the way through the year, things of that nature. But the tax returns are first and foremost, and what they do their valuations off of. So don't be completely afraid if you're a solo entrepreneur that you cannot sell a business and have it be financed with an SBA loan, because you absolutely can. With the lenders that we work with, they understand the add back schedules and the personal benefits that an owner takes, and so do the underwriters within the group that we work with there. All right, so you didn't worry too much about the due diligence process. Naturally, you verified the financials. We had several calls with Syed, and you went through the process with the SBA. Let's jump to that for just a moment. What was it like going through the SBA process, and what did you have to do?
Yeah, so the fun thing is that I'd actually been through this process with previous businesses before. And so I've actually gone to the commitment letter part, but on part of the business, we just had issues and we pulled out. So I was familiar going in. I think so first of all, kudos to Stephen, kudos to you, and kudos to Syed for just being an awesome team for making it all happen. That's probably why we had a more speedy close than what's usually expected. But, aside from that, I think having everything ready to go, I mean, Stephen was good about that. He pretty much gave me more or less the stuff that I needed in terms of, these are the things on the checklist. You should probably have this done, because from my experience, I know that this will more than likely go through. That helps, because a lot of times there's all this piecemealing going on. A lot of times the buyer takes a long time to get stuff back, the seller. We didn't really have that issue here. But, again, it really matters. I've worked with SBA bankers before, and it really matters on who it is that you're dealing with. And with Stephen's case, he just had everything down. He's done e-commerce. He's done SaaS businesses. There was no, well, how does this work? Or where's so tell me where the hard assets are in this business. There was none of that.
Right.
So that kind of streamlined the process really well for all of us. But I think just having that stuff done up front, that's what helped us get it really, done expediently.
Let me just, you said that Stephen and myself and the underwriters all work very well together, Syed, so on and so forth. I happened to have dinner with Stephen and the underwriter that worked on your business. They were both in Charlotte a couple of weeks ago, and they both talked about you as being one of their favorite buyers. So for anybody listening, this stuff matters. Nathan bought a business with a note to the seller when somebody else made an all-cash offer. The seller chose Nathan over that all-cash offer at the same purchase price because he liked Nathan and what he stood for. The SBA lender and the underwriter both said that Nathan was one of their favorite buyers of all time, which makes the process easier. They're going to work harder for you when they like you. It's human nature. So really, really, really important to understand that aspect of it. Let's jump now on to closing, training, and transition, and what's taken place since then. I think we closed just before Christmas. By the way, it was probably from letter of intent to closing about 50 days, which is fairly short for an SBA loan, and we had a full week of Thanksgiving in there, so call it 45-ish. What's transpired since you closed? How has it gone? What was training and transition like, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, again, comparing it to the past businesses I've had and working with past sellers, it's been night and day. The great thing is that because of the level of business, that we're at, in the seven figures, because Syed runs 7 and 8 figure businesses above, he's very meticulous. So the first thing he did was set up, an Asana project and a Dropbox to-do list with all the things that his team needed to do for me, everything I needed to do. So that made it a lot more streamlined. And again, if you're selling your business and you're getting to that point, make sure you have something like that in place, because that's the other warm fuzzy. That lets you know that, okay, the stuff I'm not thinking about as a buyer, the seller thought about for me. And we're kind of running through those checklists. So, I would say the transition went pretty smooth. I mean, not really any hiccups. I talked to the CTO, I talked to the CFO. We all had these, one-on-ones where we talked about what they did. So I made sure that I knew exactly what each person's role is, because I was taking over a couple of people's roles.
How did they feel, by the way, the staff, with you coming in and taking over Syed's role? Were they excited? Were they scared? What was that like to tell them that news?
I think that initially they were, just like most transitions, they were maybe a little blindsided, just because there was a lot of gray areas up until the actual deal was inked. So they were a little blindsided. They were a little confused about what was going to happen now. Are they getting pushed into something else? Are they going to keep the same things they've had? From my end, it just took a little bit of getting them all on Zoom, talking to them all face to face, and letting them know, listen, everything stays the same. I like the way that Syed has done business. I plan to keep those same things in place. Let me know if there was something you're accustomed to and that he's done, because again, those things have all been accounted for. So I wanted to make sure I went above and beyond what they were expecting would happen after this transition, and just kind of talk them down on the fears of what naturally happens when there's a transition, even in the corporate atmosphere. So, we're good to go now. We're kind of past that. So.
Well, we kept it confidential. We didn't want to let the staff know that the business was even for sale until everything was finalized, inked, and really truly going through. And that's something all sellers struggle with, when to tell the core people. And in my case, when I sold mine, I think I waited until the asset purchase agreement was signed, because she was valuable to me and I wanted her to stick around for me and for the new owner of the business. So that's what we did here. And I know that Syed said you did a great job instilling confidence in the staff and making them feel comfortable. One of the attractive things about this business is it was one of many businesses for Syed, so he wasn't working full-time on it. How has the workload been for you taking over the business? Are you working full-time early on? Are you finding yourself with more than full-time? Are you working less? What's that situation like?
Yeah, so I'll say initially, the first 2 weeks, just like any transition, it was pretty much full-time. But I had a pre-planned vacation that was about 3 weeks long that I had to go to, going to India. So for me, that was a big deal, to make sure that I would be able to leave and just do the minor stuff in the background, answer questions, and get things done while I'm abroad.
So just, you bought the business, we closed, and then you had 2.5 weeks of being around, and then you went to India for 3 weeks.
Correct. Yeah.
And everything still ran smoothly.
And everything was still smooth. I mean, that was mentioned to me early on, and that was a really attractive factor to me, that, I think you'd mentioned that you could literally go to the Far East and come back. And that's kind of what I did.
Yeah.
And so it was good to come back and see that everything was still in place, that the team was, first of all, the team was phenomenal that Syed had assembled. Each individual player plays a major part in what they do. And for that reason, they're also very turnkey. It's a turnkey business, turnkey team. So, that's why when I saw where am I inserting myself, it was kind of learning the ropes of what's already being done and how can I improve, how can I make things better for them, and be the leadership that Syed hasn't been able to provide due to his other businesses.
Okay, so where do you see your workload now? You were working real busy that first couple of weeks. You went away for 3 weeks. Where are you now? You've been back for about a month.
That corporate atmosphere, so I still check in at 8 to 9. I'm out by 5:30, and I've told the employees the same thing. Just let's not make this a full 12 or 14-hour day, and I want to balance that work-life balance too, because I come from that kind of environment. I know it pays dividends. So, I usually work the 8 to 7 hours, sometimes 9, whatever needed. But other than that, at a certain time before my wife comes home, whatever, I'm usually done, closed up, and I'm trying not to think about it.
Well, what are you working on? Syed didn't work, but a few hours a week on the business, and now you're working 30 to 40. Are you fixing broken things, or are you working on future projects and growth opportunities?
No, the great thing is he built a solid foundation. So what I'm really doing is I'm working on the stuff that he wasn't able to do, which is the marketing, advertising, taking that further, getting the PPC set up, optimizing on the SEO, getting the right content writers in to put that detailed information that we really like to. That's been attracting the other folks in traffic. So it's been really centered around the business development, the marketing, advertising stuff, which hasn't really been done because again, he's got great recurring revenue, or we've got a great organic traffic through Google. So from that, right now, it's the going above and beyond the PPC stuff, the stuff he didn't have to do. And didn't have to really focus on because the business was really self-sustaining. So
right. So you want to grow the business. You didn't buy it and just collect a check every month. You're trying to grow it. So you're putting in more hours.
The other thing is, aside from just the business development, it's also providing the one-on-one with these folks. I mean, again, these are not contractors. These are folks that have certain benefits and they've liked that type of, attention and focus from, a leadership. And so that's what I'm able to do. I'm able to hear about the product roadmap, provide my input, figure out where we want to go instead of just, kind of them doing whatever, is done and just seeing if the money reached the bank. It's not really that.
And as far as the stuff, one thing we haven't touched on is where they work from. You've got 5 employees. Are they all working from an office or are they all remote?
They are all remote. They have been doing that for many years. So again, I try to focus in on what Syed has already been doing. So Syed has 40 plus employees who have been doing this for years. And I think Syed, again, has been doing this for 14 or 15 years. So I like that idea. And I like the fact that they're able to do this. Milestones are met. There's no, a lot of times I was just at a meeting yesterday with some other guys that own a company here in Houston. And they were like, well, how do you keep track? And I was like, I don't. There's a lot of trust involved. And there's milestones that are set. And as long as these milestones are being set, I don't care where they're working that 40 hours in.
What's your favorite software or what system are you using to communicate and track what they do and work with them? Are you using Slack or what are you focused on for people that are running remote staffs that are having trouble with it? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so Slack has been awesome. I'm pretty new to Slack. I used Skype in my last business. Slack is way better than that. So I highly recommend that. We use Zoom. So we do a lot of this, the face-to-face meetings. I think that matters a lot with the remote staff is getting that face time. And again, letting them know you're just not an employee behind a computer that's just in another state. We're talking to each other. We're going to do, once or twice a year meetups where we do team building activities. That's super important too. But yeah, I would say the Slack, the Zoom, and also Asana. Those things have been key to really helping with the project management and the milestones being set, and GitHub as well for the developers.
GitHub, okay.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, Nathan, listen, we're running out of time. How do you see the future of the business? What are you looking over the next 12, 24, 36 months? You're going to hold steady, grow 10%? You're going to grow 50%? What are you predicting?
Yeah, I'd hate to throw a prediction at it right now. I'm happy if we're over the double digits. Anywhere in the double digits, we hit triple digits year-over-year growth. I'm a happy camper. I think it's totally possible. Again, got a great business, great team in place, and there's nothing but upside. So
good.
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we're going to have to check in the future and see how it turned out. You have any last minute thoughts for both buyers and sellers? You've been in both shoes. You sold a software as a service business. You bought one. Any last minute thoughts in terms of what they should do or focus on?
Yeah, I would say the huge takeaway from this and for me has been, when you're doing these buyer and seller conversations, no matter what side you're on, keep it conversational. It's great to have your questions aside, but don't run through it like a machine gun and keep it just robotic and mechanical, because there's a huge human element here involved. And this was a prime example of that actually happening. So
that's great. Well, Nathan, Pleasure doing business with you twice now. I'm looking forward to hearing some great news, great success with Enviro Gallery and so on and so forth. I hope it really works out, and maybe we can check in the future and do another podcast update and let the folks know how you've been succeeding.
Yeah, I would love to.
Awesome, man. Thanks for your time today.
Awesome. Talk to you later, Joe.